A little bit of history, the tin building right there, Mr. Pope, Pope and Turner, he married Mr. Motly's daughter. Mr. Pope had no money, and he told me himself he came into town on a train. He jumped on the train. He said his knees were torn out in his breeches. He had met Mrs. Pope, or Mrs. Motly at college. And so he jumped on the train because he had no money, snuck on the train. He jumped off the train when he got here and went and met Mr. Motly and said he wanted to marry his daughter. And he didn't like him because he was poor. But he gave him some money, enough money to build that tin building and buy a team of mules and a wagon. And he started selling fertilizer out of that building, and he made it. He made a business out of it, and he showed Mr. Motly that he was a businessman. But that was his first business. And then he opened Pope and Turner, and he took over the bank, and he did quite well for himself. I always thought this was a neat house, and it needs so much work. I've got a picture of Overton that was taken in 1932, and it's in it. So I don't know how old it is. I don't know who owns it, but it's such a neat old place. This was Isidore and Ann Sasloff's house. They were both famous in their own regards. Ann was a concert pianist, and Isidore was a violinist who later became a maestro, or a conductor. And they traveled all around the world, doing concerts in their respective, with their respective instruments, and he later, conducted. And when they retired, they moved back here. This was Ann's parents' house, and they retired here, and both lived out the rest of their lives here. She once played piano for me, and she was in her 80s, and even bent over and playing it was amazing. I never heard anything, just a piano by itself, and it was so beautiful the way it flowed, and it really moved you, emotion. This is the Motly homestead. Mr. Motly is the one that built the bank, the First State Bank here in Overton. And when he passed away, it passed to his oldest daughter, who married Mr. Pope. And it's named Lombardi Hall. It's a beautiful old home. It's in some disrepair, and it needs banisters and a lot of things worked on, but it's a beautiful old mansion.
The Overton Theater opened in 1938. The theater was cooled by refrigeration, and admission cost was as follows: adults, 50 cents, children under 12, 25 cents, and viewer, 15 cents. The theater was closed in 1965. The historic theater still has a segregated entrance and balcony that was in place prior to desegregation. That entrance has only been kept for historical purposes, and the City of Overton is encouraging the owners to file for a Texas historical marker.
Our dam was in poor repair on the lake, the city lake, and so we've come back in and reworked the entire dam, rebuilt the spillway, and we haven't filled the lake back up yet. You can see the water line will be back up to where that concrete is. And we're doing lots and lots of work, trying to dress it up, for the people. I mean, this is a community, and we work together so everybody can have stuff to enjoy. You can see how these trees are planted in a row. Of course, lots of them have fallen down. We're in the process of cleaning, but my great-grandfather planted all these trees and carried the entire group of them in his 2 front shirt pockets. They were so small.
Come on in. This is where it began. They came on oxen wagon, 13 slaves. She was pregnant, couldn't go no more. This is where they stopped. This was the original, the home. The original cabin, the home. There also was a book that was in here, and they had to sign as they stayed in the home. I know that Pop Joyner has signed the book. Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Stephen F. Austin. There's a lot of big names that signed that book. Where the book is, I have no idea, but I knew somebody that replicated the book, and they're still on the hunt for the book. The floor plans came out in the Houston Chronicle in 1935 for the rest of the home. And it was finished. It was one of the 3 biggest homes in the state of Texas at the oil boom that time, and it was finished in 1937.